be here. South America. I'm sure they're here. Percy, was it? Right. Now, when I was a schoolboy around 13, absolutely everybody knew about Colonel Percy Fawcett because we'd gone to look for a lost city in the Amazons and he disappeared. Now, that was enough for us. He was a hero. And I hope that we are now going to go and find out where he went and why, and perhaps, what happened. Anyway, it's very exciting. Mosquito net. Oh, God, mice. Oh, too bad. Mice, there are mice everywhere. Oh, stinks too. Hat. Now, Colonel Percy Fawcett, here comes your rescue mission.
I was born in the wrong century. That's what my friends tell me, and I'm afraid they're right. I should have lived in the 19th century, when most of the world still had to be discovered. I should have been one of those brave men who left the safety and warmth of their homes to explore the blank areas on the globe, those places where no white man had ever set foot. Without those men, the world would not be as it is today. This is going to be a great trip. It's been 30 years since I last visited Amazonia and the Brazilian jungle, and these are places full of mystery and adventure. When I realise that Percy Fawcett spent years of his life here, it makes me jealous. Especially in the early 1900s, when Fawcett lived here, Brazil was a paradise for explorers. Vast amounts of the rainforests were unvisited. Lots of Indian tribes still lived completely isolated. And Colonel Percy Fawcett was convinced that somewhere in this jungle must be the remains of a lost city. The city of Zed, as he called it, with stone houses and even a central square with a statue. The longer he looked for it, the more magical this place became. Fawcett thought this city might be linked to the lost world of Atlantis, a highly advanced utopian civilization. And if he could find it, the discovery would change the world. No wonder that Fawcett's story inspired many people. Even the greatest adventurer of cinema, Indiana Jones, is modelled on Colonel Percy Fawcett. So yes, this is going to be fun. But before leaving for Brazil, I need to make some visits in the UK to prepare for this trip. It's my good old friend John Hemming I want to consult. As the former director of the Royal Geographical Society, he should know all about getting lost in the rainforest.
John, how wonderful to see you. That's so good, a long time.
Yes, I know you've been roaming the world.
Yes. Remember these.
Just like Percy Fawcett, he has spent years of his life in the most remote parts of Brazil. As a young explorer, John Hemming found tribes that had never, ever seen white men before. And these expeditions were not without risk. John actually lost one of his best friends in an ambush.
After about 5 months, and suddenly on our main trail, the one we cut, there was Richard Mason's body with 40 arrows arranged around it and 17 clubs.
17 clubs.
Yeah, and he'd been ambushed, and it could have been any one of us. And they chopped his head off. I've got some of the arrows, 2 of the arrows here. There's a lot of arrows.
Wow.
I'm trying to find which.
Well, that's a
Which of the
big surprise.
lethal
weapons.
These are the real thing. Yeah.
Oh, unbelievable.
That's panorama. Those were beside Richard's body.
Wow.
I'm afraid. And it was about 40 of these arrows. In their language, when they were finally contacted, their word for a stranger was the same as their word for an enemy. So they were at war with everybody.
Yes. Well, when I was at prep school, a schoolboy, Fawcett, Colonel Percy Fawcett, was he was a sort of hero, collective hero. And I suppose because he'd done something wonderful, we didn't know what, but he disappeared in a jungle was the main thing about him.
Yes, because I've never heard a good word about it.
No, you haven't. Oh, wonderful.
Much to my surprise, John Hemming doesn't seem to be very fond of Fawcett. But as the former director of the Royal Geographical Society, he knows a lot about him. For it was this famous society that trained Fawcett as a surveyor and sent him on his first expeditions in the Brazilian rainforest.
Anyway, Bolivia now had new boundaries with Brazil. And they wrote to the Royal Geographical Society saying, could they send someone out to survey these boundaries?
Oh, wonderful.
So he went, and that was in, I think, 1907. And then he got this idea. He convinced himself that there was a hidden city somewhere in the Amazon with lights that were perpetually lit, and the Indians were scared of it. And then there was one tower shaped like a mushroom. I don't know where he got all this stuff. And then he heard the war had broken out. And so he went back to England. And he left the army, but he joined up again and had a good war. He ended up as a colonel. Well, my father had to report to him at one stage.
Report him?
Yes, and said he was the most disagreeable man he'd ever
Really?
met.
Really?
But my father had this beautiful map of where all the German guns were.
Yeah.
But they had to report to this Colonel Fawcett. He'd get out his Ouija board and say, oh, my board tells me there's a German gun emplacement there, and mark it on their maps.
Oh, incredible.
Now, we're talking life and death. This is not just a...
And the Ouija board is to call the spirits, isn't it? The spirits can handle you.
It's a spirit thing.
It's a
And
crazy...
he was marking, and so there would be a Allied bombardment of some place that this lunatic had put
psychic,
on
nutcase place.
Yeah, but anyway, that's not why I dislike him. He's crazy. He's an arrogant, nasty man.
Good God! My hero! An arrogant and nasty man with a Ouija board? I can hardly believe it. When I learn that Percy Fawcett's granddaughter is still alive, I can't wait to meet her and to straighten things out about her grandfather.
Hi, Redmond O'Hanlon. And it's great fun to meet you because Fawcett, he was my schoolboy hero with all the other schoolboys like that. Do I take my shoes off? Yes. That's him, is it?
Yeah, that's him.
That's a young man, of
Yeah.
course. Wow. Oh, that's
In Devon
tremendous.
somewhere.
Yeah.
It's a good picture.
He has this sort of arrogant pose, doesn't he? A proud man, perhaps you should say.
Well, you know, he was an army officer.
Yeah,
they all pose like
yeah,
that.
they do. Yes, of course they do. Yeah.
This is my grandmother, Nina. She was lovely.
She was tough too, wasn't she? And wanted
she
to
was tough.
follow him. And
She always thought he would be coming back. Always. And she did go to mediums. But,
yeah, she went to meet him. Yeah, well, you can understand that.
yeah.
But my wife didn't. When she was told I disappeared in the Amazon, she sold my car. That's not funny. Yeah. I haven't got over it, really, as you can see. It was a Renault 5 and I was very fond of it.
Then Rolette tells me that her grandfather was even worse than my wife. He cashed in his pension to fund his expedition, and he even sold his wife's violin.
Pietro took it without asking, and he sold it to finance an expedition.
Fawcett sold her violin.
Yeah.
After the First World War, Percy Harrison Fawcett made several attempts to find his lost city. But these expeditions turned into disasters, and the hardship in the jungle forced him twice to abandon his search. Then in 1925, Fawcett set off for the last time, and this time he took his oldest son Jack and Jack's friend Raleigh Rimmel with him. They were only 18 years old when they set off into the jungle, and nothing has been heard of them since.
And that's Jack.
Though he was handsome, as Fawcett said.
You can't compare the times then and the times now. It's just not possible.
No.
Different world.
I spend the whole afternoon looking at all the photographs and artwork that Colonel Fawcett made during his travels. Dozens of incredibly detailed drawings.
Not at all how I imagine him. Think of the artist here as a peaceful expert in minutiae.
I wish I'd known him. I wish, been able to know him.
Roulette shows me all the medals from the First World War.
Service medals, these.
Only very brave men get these.
Yeah.
And even the gold medal he received from the Royal Geographical Society.
It's a real achievement to get one of these.
Roulette has preserved it all. And then she shows me the most stunning thing.
That was pretty amazing, actually. Years ago, we had a phone call from a man called Brian Ridout, and he knew of the existence of this ring. It belonged to an Indian. And so Brian came here, and he said, I don't really want to part with it, but I feel I have to offer it to you. So I said, yeah, it's come home.
And this is Fawcett's ring.
He would never have parted with it, ever.
No.
Therefore, it was taken by force.
Yeah, we knew it.
He
And
wore
you
it.
knew at once it was his, did you?
Yes, yes.
And what does it say here, the family motto?
Nec aspera terrent. It means they fear no obstacles. It's got a bad kink.
Yeah, hit with a machete, yeah.
Who knows? My sister had a friend who was very psychic. And she took it in her hand and she dropped it. She said there's too much blood involved. She said, I don't want to have anything to do with it.
And do you think that meant his blood when he was killed? Or?
Who knows? But it's still quite powerful. You can still feel the tingling when
Can
you
you?
wear it.
Yeah.
Well, it's less the case now, but I remember on numerous occasions the cat sitting on me, and then suddenly he would sit up with eyes like this and look behind me.
Yeah.
And animals are much more psychic than we are. And it was someone tall, because he would look up.
A cat seeing his apparition, a busted ring, and my friend telling me my hero is a lunatic. I must say, I'm a bit confused, for never before have I encountered such extreme mixed opinions about one of my heroes. But this one thing that Fawcett was after, the lost city, could it actually have existed? Or was he just chasing a dream? Time to go to Brazil and find out what was real and what was fantasy.
There's reason in the old saying, see Rio before you die. I know of no other place to compare with Rio de Janeiro, and it is my hope to live there someday. If financial success rewards this exploration work, we shall build a family home on the slopes of the mountains overlooking that glorious harbour. I like the people too, and if this dream comes true, I shall be grateful to be accepted as one of them. and nothing could please me more than to spend the rest of my life in the service of Brazil. Well, you can see what he meant. Yeah, you really can.
Lots of beautiful things to be seen here in Rio. But the real reason I'm here is this mystical manuscript that inspired Fawcett in his quest for a lost city. If I'm not mistaken, it's still where Fawcett once founded, the National Library of Brazil.
Here we are, Manuscritos, a library full of secrets. Hi. Anna. You must be Anna.
Yes, I am.
Thank you very much.
Glad to
Wonderful.
meet you. How are
Yes,
you?
good to meet you.
Please
And
come.
I'd love to see your very famous manuscript, number 512.
It's all prepared for you. Please sit down.
Here?
Yes.
Okay.
Here it is. Oh, they're a little for you.
Oh, no, that's fine.
It's fine.
Wow.
This is the manuscripts. It's very old, as you can see. Let me
Beautiful.
find it, please.
Beautiful.
Here it is.
Wow.
You see?
Oh, it begins here.
Yeah, it begins here. Relação histórica de uma oculta e grande povoação, which means the historical account of a very old and hidden village that was discovered in the year of 1753.
Exciting.
Da parte do Oriente desta entrada, pois achamos vários subcações. It's very difficult because of the abbreviations
yes,
we have here
same in English,
and the
but-
writing.
But a bit more
But it
such a
says that
sexy
it
language.
was. He describes the orientation.
But this was the real inspiration.
Yes.
And here it's amazing to actually see them. These are the
Well, this
signs that he-
Yeah, the signs are inscriptions that the person who wrote this
Yeah.
found on stone,
Yeah.
and they copied all these inscriptions here.
Yes.
The interpretations are very, very different. Some people
Yes.
says it was a sign that Romans went here and
Wow.
colonized. Others says it's a door that leads to a subterranean world.
yes. It's very convincing.
I very, very like to see someone coming in here and saying, I found it.
Yes.
Even though they didn't find the place, photos of a magnificent place, but only a photo of an inscription that I can see it's the same inscription that was there.
Yes, that would be
And
fine.
something that could prove that this is true.
There is something strange about the story of Percy Fawcett. At first, one is ready to dismiss his adventures to find a lost city as foolish enterprises. But then his obsession crawls under your skin, and after reading the manuscript 512, one starts to think, what if he was right? What if there is a lost city hidden in the jungle? Before leaving Rio, I decide to spend the afternoon on the Copacabana to empty my mind. But even there, I seem to be haunted by an apparition of Colonel Fawcett. Before it gets really spooky, we travel to Sao Paulo. Now, this is a city you can't imagine ever getting lost, although the skyscrapers seem to have formed a jungle of their own. I have a lunch appointment in a typical suburban bar of Sao Paulo.
Well, we're about to meet Hermes Lille, who wrote this book, Colonel Fawcett, or The Real Indiana Jones. And it was a runaway bestseller in Brazil. Hi. Looks like a wonderful book.
Esse é o manuscrito chamado 512.
The first thing that Leal pulls out of his bag is a microfilm of the exact same manuscript that we studied in the library in Rio the other day, and he knows it by heart.
Quando Faustus ficou sabendo que existia a possibilidade de ter uma cidade perdida no Brasil, quando ele estava ainda no Peru, nas pesquisas com o Peru, ele fez uma ligação da possibilidade de uma cidade perdida com essa aqui. Ele ligou as coisas, ele falou, pode ser essa cidade. Acontece que o Faustus estava no Peru quando Machu Picchu foi descoberta. E ele estava ali perto e ele pensou, se no Peru existe uma cidade perdida, por que no Brasil também não existe? Machu Picchu, eu acho que reacendeu nele uma possibilidade de procurar uma cidade no Brasil. A partir do momento de Machu Picchu, ele estava próximo a Machu Picchu, estava muito próximo ali, já andava na região, ele podia ter descoberto Machu Picchu, por exemplo, Faustus.
Well, that makes perfect sense. Of course, when Hiram Bingham in 1911 staggered into the lost Inca city Machu Picchu, Percy Fawcett must have been wild with jealousy, especially because he was actually in the close neighbourhood when Bingham made his great discovery. It explains why Fawcett thought his lost city of Zed was real. Leal tells me he actually tried to find the remains of Fawcett 15 years ago, an expedition that turned into a drama. Leal puts us in touch with his travel companion of that tragic trip.
Percy Fawcett's disappearance inspired many adventurers to go to look for him and his lost city. And among them was a man called James Lynch, who's very rich. He's a banker, and he and his son led an expedition to the point where Fawcett was thought to have disappeared. And he sent this helicopter for us to prevent us getting stuck in traffic for hours. It's taking us to his home.
James Lynch was the driving force behind an expedition in the 90s that followed the last footsteps of Percy Fawcett. But after 3 days, the whole expedition turned into a nightmare when bandits from an Indian tribe kidnapped the crew and forced them to abandon all their equipment.
Hi, James Lynch here. Yeah. Thank you.
It was a traumatic experience that made one thing very clear to James, that it is very difficult not to die and disappear in the region where Fawcett was last seen.
Hi, we finally made it.
Welcome.
Worked out the lift. Thank
Hope
you.
you had a good trip.
We had a very good trip.
Where Fawcett disappeared is a little to the right of this map, Serra do Rongador, and it's a place to this day is quite fascinating. There are different groups of religious people that believe that everything from flying saucers, UFOs, being there. So there's a very spiritual underpinning to everything in the Serra do Rongador. And I think Fawcett, if we go back, into the 1920s, this region was almost unexplored. And it's still quite exotic to this day, although, a lot of it's turned into farmland.
Mm. The great news is James wants to join us on our trip to the region where Fawcett disappeared.
The location that we're going to start out at Serra do Rongador, is up here in this area. One of the high points that you'll see is a finger that points to the sky.
Vale do Araguaia, nas trilhas do Roncador, portal da Amazônia, o chakra no planeta. Grande desbravador liderava uma expedição em busca de mistério, outra civilização.
One of the principal radar stations in Brazil is up here on the top of the mountain. I've been up there talking to the guys who man the radars and said,
these stories about UFOs and so forth. Have you ever picked up anything on your radar screen that's strange? And he said, yeah, we have a lot of UFOs that are unidentified on the radar screen. I said, what do you mean? Do you think they're flying saucers? Do they zip around real fast and stuff? And he said, no, they're just unidentified, and they're probably drug runners in planes.
Oh, I see.
I find that an easier explanation to swallow than little green men.
Well, it's the little green women that would interest me, I think.
You have a long enough rope.
Homem aventureiro, gente desaparecida, viajou por dentro da serra, procurando a cidade perdida. Nas trilhas de Fawcett, a estrela brilhou. A cidade Z, na Serra do Roncador. A cidade Z, na Serra do Roncador.
Oh, look, hey, he's panning for gold.
Huh?
I've never seen that before. Terrible, but I haven't. Could go down and say hello. Huh? Hey, can I come and join you? Would that be okay? Is the way that round there, or?
Segue aqui a cerca de arame.
Obrigado. Ai, difícil, hein? Can I have a go? Let's go lá.
Atenção. Pega o cascalho do fundo. Aqui eu já organizei o cascalho. A água, gravidade, veio aqui. Tudo pesado está aqui. Vou precisar de uma grande montanha para tirar uma grama, para fazer um anel. Esse movimento. E o corpo tem que ter como um tango.
Como um tango?
Um tango. Você dança com a bateia.
La dança.
Agradável.
Big.
Sim, o dia inteiro. O sol está nascendo e eu estou aqui dançando. Compreende?
Yeah.
Assim. Isso.
So this is the reason for 90% of all expeditions. Gold and precious stones. And maybe even Fawcett hoped to find this in his lost city. But God, is this heavy?
Well, I think you deserve any gold you can find. That's your back and your knees.
Espera, vou lhe mostrar algo.
Wow!
Esta é uma pedra que encontrei fazendo o buraco no cascalho.
That's a really
é uma
big...
ferramenta de outra civilização que passaram por aqui. É uma ferramenta.
Very heavy. Wow, that's absolutely...
Então, para mim, vale mais do que o ouro. Hoje, ela vale muito mais do que o ouro. Que é um registro que, por aqui, não só eu passei, passaram-se muita gente.
That's incredible.
Wow, that's amazing. Our tango dancing gold digger found a stone axe. I know it's by no means a lost city, but it's proof of a very old civilization. But according to James, there is more proof to be found in this region. He knows a local guide called Mauro who can lead us to a place up the mountain where we can find carvings similar to the ones described in manuscript 512. The only thing is, it's boiling hot and humid here. The tracks are steep, and there are insects everywhere. I hope James doesn't notice I'm about to collapse when I pretend to admire the landscape.
Bloody Fawcett. God.
This plain out here in the 1920s, try to see it the way it was. It was dense forest. It's turned into cattle ranching farms right now, but previously it was very dense forest, very difficult to get through. The Roncador Mountains are long range, that you have the Xingu River and its various branches. And over here you have the Araguaia River with its various branches. And the coast of Brazil is over here. So you have water and you have Bahia. His first expedition came in this way. The last expedition, he went from Cuiabá to Bacairi Post to Dead Horse Camp, where he wrote the last note to his wife, saying, now it's just the three of us, Jack and Raleigh and I, and we're going in and we're going to find Z. If he continued on east, he would run into the Serra do Roncador. Question is, did he ever make it here?
Have you found one that looks the same as Fawcett's?
This one here actually seems very close to this one right here. You can see it's sort of a cross with a curve to it on the bottom. Yeah, very, very similar. It's interesting. And there's this one here that sort of looks like a leaf that might be similar to this one. There's one up above here that he said that is exactly like this one. He said the Chavante Indians say it's the big river in the sky, which I presume they're talking about the Milky Way. It's a curved like this, and then it has some down pointing lines to it. That is the drawing that they have up there, which is identical to this one. Oh well. The skeptic in me says, did somebody come by 20 years ago and sort of graffiti it, or is this all Indian graffiti? Does it mean anything?
Well, I'm glad James brings it up. To me, this doesn't look really convincing. To be honest, these carvings don't look a bit like the drawings in the manuscript. Besides, are they authentic? Someone might have carved these signs in the wall last summer. Who knows? When we make our way back to the base camp, we run into a surprise.
For many years, we are feeling that this place, Mountain of Roncador, has a special meaning for us. We don't know if it's because the shape of the rocks or some kind of inner feeling that we feel, but exactly at this place that we are now, we can feel some kind of communication or resonance with the mountain. If you have a profound state of meditation, you can communicate with these rocks and these mountains so deeply, so deeply. We believe that you can go further and go into the rocks. You can go into some kind of tunnel, but for some reason, until now, we're not able to find. And maybe Fawcett could have found some kind of these ones. I believe he found not a lost city, but a found city. A city that have much more respect or much more real connection to the earth. Yesterday we were here for the first time in this right place, and we realized that this side of the rock,
This side behind me.
Yes, this side had a little much more capability to connect with us than the other side. I don't know why, but you can put one hand or both hands in the rock, and in a few seconds you can feel some kind of wave that you will feel something like this. A small movement to the right and to the left. If the rock and you could for a moment be just as one. Okay? You don't have to worry about the plants or little animals or insects or any kind of that. Just feel. Just feel.
What am I doing here? I mean, true. The inscription on Fawcett's ring said, "They fear no obstacles," but it didn't say, "They walk through walls."
You first.
I don't know. It's spiritual in ways, but I really didn't feel any energy.
We may just not be spiritual enough.
Yeah.
Before we leave, our meditating friends tell me that in daily life they are medical doctors in a regular hospital. James knows that since Fawcett's disappearance, many people have hoped to find a lost world of some sort here. And in recent years, spiritual tourism is booming. I'm excited and intrigued by the anthropology of it, and I asked James what he thinks happened to Fawcett.
The four versions that exist that I know of, there may be more versions, but the first one being that the Kalapalo Indians actually clubbed him, killed him, buried him. This was a story that was the version of what happened to Fawcett for years and years. More recently, the Kalapalo have said no, that they really didn't kill them. They are not at blame for Fawcett's disappearance, and that he actually walked off into the forest and disappeared, and they never heard from him again. So that's one. The other one is that, in fact, he did find what he was looking for. He found this lost city that has not yet been discovered. I find that very hard to believe nowadays with satellite imagery and with all the deforestation that's gone on. Something would have been found from a physical sense. And then there's the metaphysical version that, in fact, he did pass on, but passed on as a living being into another dimension, and that, in fact, he's still there. I support the more practical version that he got in over his head. The Indians did not kill him. He moved on and died in the jungle.
Well, I can imagine he died in the jungle. I'm exhausted after only one long day of climbing. Imagine doing that for months in a row, with no shelter at night, with mosquitoes and black fly and ants and jaguars around you, and without even knowing if you're going to find what you're looking for. All night long, I have these confusing dreams of a tall man appearing and disappearing in the distance of the jungle. Next day, we decide to travel on and say goodbye to James Lynch, who stays behind to enjoy a bit more of the spiritual environment. Secretly, I'm a bit disappointed that we didn't find any evidence for Fawcett's city. The same disappointment that Fawcett's only remaining son, Brian, must have felt when he visited this place in the 50s. In a footnote, Brian writes the following about his father. The area where he believes Zed to lie has in recent years been regularly flown over by domestic airlines, and no trace of an ancient city has been reported. It is true that remains of incalculable age have been found thereabouts, but no city. So, no city. But does that mean that my hero had it all wrong? I can hardly believe it, But when we look at his art, for instance, he must have been a great observer. And he was a surveyor. He had to be meticulous. So somewhere his suppositions must be valid. When I reread his whole work, I notice there is one striking observation.
I am probably the only one who knows the secret, and I obtained it in the hard school of forest experience. Nevertheless, both native and foreign scholars of considerable erudition in Brazil agree that an old and forgotten civilization can be the only key to the riddle of the remarkable pottery and inscriptions that have been discovered.
Pottery and inscriptions, that might be the key to the riddle. Maybe Fawcett wasn't as foolish as some say. I'm going to meet a journalist called Charles Mann, who recently published a magnificent book that might shed a whole new light on this matter.
He was kind of right about what he was looking for, and a lot of the sort of serious, sober people who in the past, denigrated him were wrong. They were wrong for the right reasons, and he was right for the wrong reasons. And so it's sort of fascinating to see somebody, for completely crazy reasons, coming up with something that's a little closer to reality than what the sort of good, solid people are thinking. And this very famous archaeologist from the US, Betty Meggers, effectively suggested that you couldn't have a society larger than about 1,000 people in the Amazon because it would just destroy itself. And the reason was that the climate and the soil of the Amazon make it so that if you cut down the trees, which you need to have for agriculture, which you need to have for large-scale society, you'll wreck the land and wreck your productive base, and so you can't have large-scale sophisticated societies in the Amazon. Only very small groups can live there. And so the idea that, of course, that you could have these cities, these sophisticated places in there, that was anathema, that was impossible, ecologically impossible. And what's happened in the last decade or so, there's a researcher named Michael Heckenberger in particular, has found, I think, very compelling evidence that these kinds of cities did exist. In the Amazon. He's plotted their traces. He's found, I think, compelling evidence for their existence. And oddly enough, it's not that far from where Percy Fawcett was looking for them. Totally for these mystical reasons, he's actually looking for cities where we now think that there actually were cities.
So there were cities, not just one called Zed, but Fawcett's intuition was right. Charles Mann tells us there is a research crew working right in the middle of the rainforest, and they have found spectacular evidence for these revolutionary ideas. I want to see it for myself. But before we go there, we have to take some precautionary measures.
We're not going into the jungle for 4 months or 6 months. It's just a few days. But on the other hand, you can get covered in black fly bites so that you go black in 2 days easily. Now you want to stuck your trousers into your socks. Very simple procedures. And always wear at least 2 pairs. And you put this in here. And then put this stuff on your face because they like that too. And you can't defend yourself. And around the back of the neck. And in your hair, it's very important. But not on your forehead. As the SAS told me, never put it on your forehead, lad. It runs into your eyes and they itch and they hurt and you can't see the enemy. So don't do that.
On the boat, we meet the lovely young archaeologist Helen Edema. She is the head of scientific research at the excavation site, and she is fascinated by Fawcett's conviction of a lost city.
Well, we have to take the shoes off to go inside.
So here I am, standing in my socks in the middle of the rainforest, in a hole like a mass grave. With Fawcett's disappearance in mind, that is rather scary. But in this hole lies the solid scientific proof that Fawcett's observations were right.
You can find ceramic shards, ceramic remains. This is totally indicating human presence, massive presence here in the area. It's very, very dirty, but there are drawings here.
Lots and lots of drawings on it, yes.
See here? Yeah, something circular here, and then
a straight line there, some little nicks in it.
Yeah.
Spooky.
Yeah.
I think somebody doing that right here. Yeah? Must have been a lot of swearing going on there. I mean, a lot of pots are broken.
Yes,
Screaming and yelling. Yeah?
These ones here we have collected the previous days.
That's huge.
Yes, this is a nice one. This used to be a small plate.
Oh, wow.
You see?
Oh, beautiful little plate.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, these tiny bits of pottery mean a revolution in the way we have to think about the population of the rainforest. And what makes it even better is that these pieces of pottery are found in a thick layer of black, fertile ground that could only have been evolved by long-term human agriculture. But Helena has got more to show me.
You're gonna notice there are carvings. Yeah. There's plenty of them. They have different designs. Besides, they're all faces. It looks like human faces. Some of them are triangles, some of them are circular, some of
Wow! Finally, some tangible proof. And although these Stone Age smileys here don't look a bit like the carvings from the manuscript in Rio, I feel I am as close to the city of Zed as I can get.
Some of the ceramic assemblage, the ceramic shards we collected at the excavation unit, they have exactly the same face we find here on the petroglyph. These two blocks, they were covered by this sediment, and they are carved. So it indicates that they were human worked before the river brought all this layer of sediment. By dating this deposition, we can have a minimum age of when the carvings were made.
So we don't know yet how old these carvings actually are, but they definitely were not made yesterday. And they probably date from way before Columbus.
And I want you to show us exactly where we are. This is where Fawcett was looking for his lost city of Zed in Roncador, somewhere around here.
Well, we are working here at the Amazon basin, and all through this area we can see spots indicating massive human presence in this area prior to the European conquest in the pre-colonial times.
So people for 2,000 miles plus.
Yes, or plus.
Maybe 100 million.
Maybe.
Yes, maybe. Wow. Some city.
Yeah. So even though he was looking for his El Dorado somewhere in Mato Grosso,
Yes.
I believe the El Dorado was all throughout the Amazon.
The El Dorado was so large.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, what a wonderful conclusion to a mystery.
On the journey back, it is with completely different eyes that I look at the rainforest we travelled through. It's a great thought that all this jungle might once have been a big garden tended by millions of people. So Colonel Percy Fawcett was right after all, sort of. It's just not a city of Zed, but an immense garden of Zed. A great 19th century British writer once wrote, "To believe in the heroic makes heroes." And I think he is right. Whenever possible, one should always believe in the heroic, and nurture one's mind with great thoughts about great men, even if they buggered off into the jungle and never returned.
Thank you for watching. For more on this subject, take a look at the playlist. You can also watch this recommended video. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and we'll keep you updated on our documentaries.